On this day in history, 1512, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel opened to the public. The great artist Michelangelo presented his work, stretching from 133 feet in length with a width of 46 feet. I don't know how he did it. My neck cramps whenever I have to install an IKEA ceiling fan. But for you, congratulations, Michelangelo. You will always be first and foremost a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle in my mind. Live from Wattpad Nation, it's the quarter today. So, manuscript after your mini dance party. What are you going to do next? And how do you get ready for querying? And by my side for this is our first time guest, Rob Shapiro. And just to get everybody up to speed, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a writer. I'm a novelist and TV writer in Toronto, Ontario. I write in some kids animation, and also my YA debut just came out last August from Dundurn Press called The Book of Sam, and it started on Wattpad. It was originally titled Harper's in Hell, and yeah, it's been a really exciting, awesome experience so far.
Did the Wattpad people pick up on it and feature you as like one of the featured stars?
It was chosen as a featured story 2015 or so. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, so like it started on Wattpad, and then I think it got to about maybe 10,000 reads, chosen as a featured story, and then kind of like catapulted from there to wherever it is today. It's probably 90,000 reads, but yeah, it was chosen as a feature story like pretty early on after the last chapter was published.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so just kind of going into it, a lot of people don't know what querying is. Can you break that down?
Yeah, so querying is the process of reaching out to either literary agents or publishing houses to get them to see if they're interested in reviewing your work and potentially acquiring it. So a query letter is pretty much, think of it as a cover letter where you break down what it is you're pitching, in this case, your manuscript, based on their requirements and their submission guidelines. And it's a sales pitch. And you're trying to get either an agent to represent you or a publishing house to acquire you. It's usually also like a multi-phase process. Obviously, it differs per publishing house or per literary agent, but a lot of times you just submit a cover letter, maybe a few chapters or the first 25 pages. Then they'll request either full or partial manuscript. And then from there, if they're interested, you'll sign with them, an agent, or the acquisitions editor at a publishing house will take it and pitch it internally to hope you get an offer.
So when you finished your book,
yeah,
you completed the entire thing. How long did it take you to go from writing the end on your book to getting into querying?
Probably shorter than it should have. The way it worked, I don't remember the exact timeline, but I submitted to about 30 agents, mostly in Canada, a few big ones in the US. So I'm based in Canada, as I said, in Toronto, and I actually got a pretty good response. So I've heard everything in terms of like ratio from like one manuscript request for every like 50 to 75 to even 100 query letters. Like it's a long process where you hope to get one out of many rejections. But I remember I got 5 or 6 full manuscript requests out of my first 30. So I was like, this is amazing. I'm, like I have a great story. I'm obviously the greatest writer ever, but then they all rejected it. And so I'm like, okay, so it was pretty deflating. And then I realized, okay, why don't I stop and rework on the manuscript? So I actually went back and rewrote the majority of it. Like, I can't even express to you, like, from Wattpad to first draft to the draft that sold is like, they're so different. I know like so many writers say that, but I really, really rewrote it. And then I pitched it to about maybe 90 to 100 more literary agents. And they all rejected it. And so that whole process from that time until I started up again was probably a year or so. And then I eventually sold directly to a publisher, and that was probably 2 years after I finished writing it, roughly, maybe a little more.
Okay. All right.
It's a long
Oh
process.
well.
I mean,
During that process, how did you stay positive?
I'm just, I'm a really positive, cheery guy. No, I honestly, I don't know. Like, I think about it often. It's like, you could probably relate to this too. Is like, why not quit after 20, after 30, after 50, after 100? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I think that is the biggest thing about if you want to be a writer, and I'm sure it's the same with musicians and directors and producers and visual artists, that it's just perseverance in the sense of like you just you kind of stumble upon the right timing just from kind of pushing through the rejections. But there's no logical answer. I have no idea why I kept going besides the fact I loved the story, I believed in it, I thought it'd be a great book. But
And
there's no
it
good
has
answer.
been released.
Oh, sorry, it's cutting out. I can't hear you.
Oh, it has been released.
Hmm.
So how's that been going for you?
It's been great. I've been doing a lot of events. I mean, obviously, releasing a novel in a pandemic is really difficult. I mean, bookstores, the situation in Toronto is they were closed for a while. They were only doing like curbside pickup. So, you want to go into bookstores, you want to sign copies, you have like public events, whether it's with 10 people, 100 people, are huge. Book launches, like it's all opportunities to sell books and expand your reader base. And, you just can't do it right now for good reasons, of course. But um, it's been tough in that regard. I was booked for some in-person events that I got booked in January, and they got canceled, obviously. But truthfully, it's also been a great
Oh.
experience. Like I've seen it in bookstores, I've gotten some great reviews, I've gotten my publisher's happy. So I mean, I think that's first and foremost. But it's a really interesting, wild experience to like work on something for so long and then see it out in the world. As I'm sure you and a lot of people watching can relate. It's very surreal, even if you're releasing under like interesting or weird circumstances, like with COVID-19.
Do you think that that's like really, really changed the way the publishing scheme has been working?
Like with the pandemic,
Yeah.
yeah, I think everything has changed. I mean, people might be reading more and buying more books online, but the truth is too that like I don't know if they are, because I mean, people have their employment is fraud or they're worried. A lot of people, rather watch TV because it's less involving when you're stressed or whatever. I mean, everything's changed, but all these also like big book events and conferences where books go and they sell to different markets, or you sell your film and TV rights, like they're all virtual right now if they happen. So it's it's a new landscape, and I think people have to adjust and get used to it, and hopefully it goes back to normal. But it can still be a great experience. And like oops, even though I'm in, going through it, I also like, I feel for a lot of writers who are like releasing books or their first novels. Like it is a bit tougher than normal, and it's something that's always difficult. But it's still worthwhile.
We have a question from Miss Rita Koval. She asks, how do you decide whether you will query agents and hope for a positive response or go directly to a small press and if they accept, do it agentless?
Yeah, so you typically have to do one or the other. Because if you do get an agent and then, your agent's like, well, here's 5 publishing houses I'm going to submit you to. And then you're like, well, I've already been rejected by them. Your agent's like, you kind of, you know, you shot them in the foot, right? Like there's very little they can do to go out and sell. So you typically have to pick one lane. I would say go agent, because if you get an agent, they're going to do the heavy lifting a lot of the time. And they, depending on the agent, but in some cases, you're probably 90, 95% of the way toward a sale, especially with like some agents that you just know have these really established relationships. But if there's an opportunity directly with a publisher, it's a publisher you like, I say go for it. Especially if you've gotten rejected by several agents, like I think it's okay to like reach out. But for me, it's like I would prefer to, or it's more logical, I say, to go agent and then publishing house and see if that works. But you're also giving up, a piece of your advance. So, you have to really figure out what's best for you.
We were talking about this earlier before the
Yeah.
broadcast. We were talking about the templates that you used for a query letter, and I kind of want you to explain what you did and how you did it.
Yeah. I mean, the way I went about it is like in a very, I feel like, salesy sort of way where I wrote a template, which was essentially just a breakdown, I guess like one page essentially of what my query letter would look like. So it had my bio, it had what the book was about, my comparables. So some titles, usually books, but I guess they could be movies and TV shows if it works. But just comparing it, and then like some Wattpad figures and a few other little things that they ask for. They want a completed manuscript, like things like that. So I just wrote it, and then every week, so I had a long list, like an Excel document of all these agents and publishers. It was hundreds long. I would just add to it throughout the week. And then every Saturday when I'd wake up, I would spend a couple hours. I'd just pick a few agents or publishing houses. I would then write my query letters, and I would take that template. I would look at what their submission guidelines were, and then I would just adjust it based on that. So it was actually like a pretty involving process.
Okay, you went over some of the elements that other elements that are necessary for a successful query letter.
So it differs per agency or publisher because they're going to want different things. So to give you an example, and like as you go through and look at all their websites and do your research and use different tools online, you're going to realize like this is crazy. Like if you have, let's say, a thriller, some agents will say, if there's a twist ending, I want to know what it is because, I want to see where your head's at and like how good your twist is. Other agents will tell you, don't tell me what the twist is because if I read it, I want to experience it as a reader would. So you can imagine that it's like very confusing for people to go through this process, and everyone is so different. But the elements that I would find that are always there are a quick bio about yourself, just a short paragraph, writing accomplishments, who you are, just like a little personal information, that kind of stuff. You want a really clear paragraph about what your book's about, very high level, who your book is for, a couple comparables. So mine, I think, was like Percy Jackson meets Dante's Divine Comedy or something like that. So, you just really want to like frame your book as what it is. So it just catches their attention right away. And then, you can also open with something. Sorry?
It's a very interesting combination that you had.
Yeah. I think that's what it was. I might have thrown a few things in there. I want to say like there's some Goonie stuff in there too, but it's just like it's totally left my mind at this point, which is surprising. And then you want to also like show them that you have taken a little time to get to know who they are, whether it's an agent or a publisher. It's like you shouldn't be just throwing things at a wall, even though it feels that way. Like you should pick agents who are like, for me, it was a YA fantasy. So I'd go to agencies and like, who are their YA agents? What have they published? Is there writers like me? And you want to grab them from the beginning and be like, well, I'm kind of similar to this writer who you represent, or you mentioned you like this book, or you represented this book, and I think my work's like that. So, there's a lot to it, but it is really just framing this sales pitch with your book being like the thing you're trying to sell. So, I don't know why that word came out so weird there.
No, it's okay. Now that you have a representation, do you have to write another query letter?
So I didn't
if you
get representation.
Complete another manuscript?
So I think once you are with an agent, like my understanding anyway is they take it over. Like they will, however long it takes, and I would imagine it's anywhere from like a few months to like a couple years, but they will take over. Your agent should take over that whole process, and you should only be brought in when like an interested publisher wants to speak with you or there's time to discuss something. But if you're going the route of agent, once you landed an agent, like my advice is to start working on the next project. Like let your agent do their thing, and you should be starting on the next whatever it is you're going to work on.
But what about you?
What about me? What did I do after?
Yeah, well, now that you have your first one in the bank,
Mm.
are you going to have to write another query letter,
Yeah,
or
so I got you.
are you kind of accept?
Yeah, so I'm working on a new one now, but for me, I will definitely go the route of getting a literary agent whenever I'm ready to pitch. I think it'll honestly be at least a year. So for me, I'm going to have to go through the process all over again. I'm going to have to update my entire spreadsheet, start talking to agents, and start selling it, and hope that like what I've done up to this point is better selling feature than it was the first go around. But it's the Wild West. Who knows?
Off of manuscript wish list.
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you ever queried an agent off of the manuscript wish list?
I did, if I remember correctly. I used any opportunity there was, I went for it. Like PitMad, manuscript wishlist. I was looking far and wide. So for me, there's never harm in trying. So if you come across anything, go for it. There's no reason not to.
Okay, I think that's good advice, sound advice.
It's
Um,
broad, but I think it is just the way to go about it.
yeah, definitely. Um, did they tell you anything in response of why they chose your book?
So yeah, I mean,
Did they give you any
after the
feedback?
yeah, it's a weird process because you don't want to like dig too much because it's weird because you don't want to be like, so why do you guys like me? But at the same
Yeah,
time, like you're curious because I bought off a slush pile. Like statistically, they should never have even seen my manuscript. Like they never should have come across that email. Like you know, as you can imagine, how many manuscripts unrepresented. So a slush pile also is like all the scripts that don't have agents get put into one like theoretical pile. And an acquisitions editor will always pay more attention to the agent in ones because they've been vetted and they have relationships with the agent. And then, at some point they'll turn to the slush pile because they're looking to acquire things, right? Very little sells off it, but it's still possible. And I
right.
did. And the first time I met with the acquisitions editor and a few people at the publishing house, they invited me in and, to meet and congratulate and all that. I didn't dig too far, but they were just like, as the publishing house is evolving, we felt it really fit what we were doing and just generally like loved the story. They were just compelled by it. So you have to find that one person within a publishing house who just really wants to champion you and will sell you internally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any like advice for somebody that's trying to put together a querying letter and is kind of hitting their head against the table just because they can't get it right for whatever reason, that there isn't enough of themselves in it, if there's just not enough story? Is there anything that you could give, like just some advice?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, keep it super simple. Just for a second, forget that you're a writer and think about yourself at the other end who receives these queries all day. Writers are every day you're getting maybe 5 to 10, maybe it's 30 a month, however many, maybe it's 50, but only 10 are taken seriously for whatever reason. Like they don't want to constantly be told that you have the next Harry Potter or you're the next Stephen King or whatever it is. They just want to know what your story is, why you think they're the right publisher for it, and how it can sell. Like who can they sell it to? Like in terms of like, can it go into a Barnes and Noble and Indigo? Can it go into the best table? Are you a debut writer? Do you write about Americana? Like there's so many ways that they have to think about how they get a book out there. They just really want that information, right? Like they can't go out and sell you as the next, Suzanne Collins or whoever, right? So you have to just kind of cut through all that stuff and just tell them what your story is and who you are. I mean, there's a reason you wrote your book. So whatever that reason is, you have to find a way to distill it down into a very simple answer that you can then sell to them.
Okay. Uh,
Keep it simple. Keep it
all
simple
right.
is like simple
You're going,
language.
or
Very cool.
okay. Yeah. I got you. What do you think you're going to do different this next time around when you get your next work published?
In terms of querying, that's actually a great question because I don't think about it too much because I'm still early in the process of writing my new one. Um, I think it will be a little more. I think I started a little too early last time. Like I was telling you before, like I had a really good run at the beginning of querying. I had like 6 manuscript requests out of 30, but they were all rejected. And I think so. What I kind of realized was I was querying well, but my book wasn't speaking to people. So I think taking more time in between, making sure it's a little more, because the next draft of my novel is the one that's sold. And it's just about, you're so excited to get it out there and start the process. And like, I mean, every time you refresh your email, you could have an offer, right? It's exciting. You should be excited about it. If it doesn't excite
Sure.
you, then why are you doing it? But I think I have to like slow down a bit, and like the good thing is like my wife is excellent at this stuff. She actually like, I think I wrote notes on my query letter, and she was the one who actually like formulated it, and then she reviewed. I sent out 120. She read and edited 120. So, you know, continuing to
That's
listen to her will probably turn out well for me.
that's a good wife right there.
Yeah, oh man, wife of a writer. It's like it's brutal. It's just be a horrible existence.
Work on TV. Do you find much difference between the scripts that you write on TV and the manuscripts that you put together for novels?
Yeah, so I've written on one TV show, and I've had two in development with a Canadian production company. And the first one, we did like a couple rounds of development in the writer's room, and the other one, we're just working on it right now. So they've been very different experiences and very different. It's a whole other process for me, anyways, in terms of writing TV or novels. And I find that if I try to jump from one to the other, or if I don't really like take the TV hat off or the movie hat, whatever you're writing then, and put on like the manuscript hat, it just doesn't work. So the process for me is just so different. I mean, I find writing a manuscript, like writing television, is incredibly hard. It's like from structure to formatting to idea generation to taking a premise and making it into an episode. I mean, as you can imagine, or maybe you've even tried yourself or done it, it's difficult, but it doesn't translate skill wise for me to go write a manuscript, because manuscript is like just hundreds upon hundreds of story beats and different ways. It's so much beyond just dialogue and action. So you have to think differently in order to write all this interior stuff that television doesn't allow, because it's only what a viewer can see and hear, and not what's inside the character's brain.
Sure. Right.
Mhm.
Very true. And then if you put
Yeah,
too much exposition in your dialogue, you're in trouble. So
yeah, yeah. They're both so difficult, and it's similar as they appear on the outside. I find them to be so different. Like I'm just in totally different spaces when I'm writing one as opposed to the other.
now going back to your manuscripts,
Yeah.
when you were completing your drafts, you said you had to go back and do some corrections and things like that. Did you give it to somebody before you made the revisions, or did you just kind of go through it yourself and say, all right, this is what needs to happen?
So it was a couple things. I knew one of the reasons I know as early is because I knew there was a certain things I wanted to do with it that I just wasn't there yet, just because I just think I hadn't figured it out or wasn't good enough to write it that way, the way I wanted. And then at some point, the light kind of went on and I figured it out, which is part of the lesson I learned is to like, pump the brakes a bit. I also took the feedback I received from the agents who rejected me, one in particular who was like, you know, like the way you talk about the world and everything is so clear, but it feels different than what's on the page. So you have to find a way to really get that on there. So I went back and like took all the feedback and rewrote it and it just came out so much better and closer to what I actually wanted it to be. And then I do try to get people to read it. I have either friends who are writers, my wife, obviously. My father-in-law is a novelist, has been great about reading my stuff. I find that it's harder with a manuscript because you're asking someone to read, 60,000 words as opposed to like
Yeah,
a 30-page script or 14 pages for animation. So
sure.
I'm always like, do you have people read your stuff?
Well, I mean, people on Wattpad,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
have a friend every now and then go through it, but I'm not like, oh, I just finished a chapter and I needed to see if it mixes and jives with all the rest of this stuff. Let
Yeah,
me hand them a huge stack of paper and go
totally.
from there. But maybe it'll be different when I complete my work. Say, if there's some person out there that wants to read this, then great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. But if not, then it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think Wattpad, to what you were saying, is actually really good for that because what I liked about Wattpad and what I really wanted to use it for was to put an early draft out there, and even if people did the characters and world make sense, and I think that's what I was going for, and that really made me think, okay, at least I have something here, right? Like it's some people are responding to it. I was getting messages and votes and all that stuff on Wattpad. So it was really useful for me. But it was nice to have strangers who have no connection to you and no bias
Sure.
towards you. Like that. I think that's actually one of the best parts about it.
Are you going to put your next work on Wattpad?
It's a great question. I haven't decided yet. I think I'm still too early to like. It just doesn't feel like that concrete yet. Um, I don't know. Like I feel like it's really worthwhile, even just for feedback and see what an early response is. But um, I think I'll just kind of like have to see how I feel at the time. But I'm leaning towards yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about one portion of your query letter in particular, and it's kind of stuck in my craw because I don't know exactly how I would do it. But you're talking about distilling your story in a very highlighted manner.
Yeah.
Um, I have no idea how I would do that.
It's the art of pitching. It's the elevator pitch if you want to like you throw around an old cliche, but it's like you have to be able to distill your story down to 25 words or less. Like it just has to be something you can rifle off because if an agent's going to be pitched 30 to 50 to 100 stories a day, you have to grab them, so you have to figure out like what is your story at the basis barest level and then use it. And I've been spending years trying to perfect this, or not perfect because I don't know if I can ever perfect it, but to get better at this skill. And I'm not there yet, but I've worked so hard on it over the last 5 or 6 years that I've actually seen an improvement when I write something now that I'm able to like just write this quick log line of what it is. And it makes me understand my story, but it's something I can send out to someone. So if they're like everyone you send out or everyone you pitch or everyone you try to get a meeting with, they're all busy. So how can you do it like pitch your story as quickly as possible, right?
Oh man, that just sounds stressful.
It's horrible. It's horrible. The less you have to write, the harder it is, right? Because it's the economy of words that makes it so difficult. And every
Yeah.
time you write your story as something, so short or succinct, it just makes your story feel so basic. But they want basic. They want like something that's recognizable to them, and then they're trusting that the way you write and your writing voice is what's going to make it special or exceptional. But it's nice to have a little hook, and you want to show like a little turn in the story. But it's really just like, here's my character, here's what they want, here's why they won't get it, or here's the reason they can't get it. And if you look at the best movies and the best TV shows, and you see just read their log lines, you'll see like that's how easy it is to sell. Like that's how they sold their movies, whether it's Jaws or The Exorcist or The Matrix, whatever it might be. Like, every Marvel movie, Get Out, anything, it's just down to the basic 25 words or less. Like, what is your story about?
Sure. Did you find it difficult of going back to, like flip-flopping from your querying hat back to your back to your novel writing hat, because they're so different,
Mm-hmm.
and you were working on one for so long that does it to do things differently now?
Yeah, I was really tough. Like, querying to me was more like, I treat it all kind of like a job, not to like make it sound unfun, but I just was like, I have to get something done. I want to get done by a certain date, or I have to get done because there's something I'm submitting to by this day. So whatever it is, I was getting done. But querying was like, it was actually like clockwork. Whereas, when I was writing something, you don't want to. I didn't want to treat it exactly that same way. Like if I couldn't write a chapter, or however many words I was hoping to write, not to be like too hard on myself. Whereas querying, it's like, no, I have to get 3 to 5 out every week, or if I can do more, great. But it was less an art and more, it's a numbers game, accepting that it's a numbers game and just doing the work. Whereas with writing, it's like, you should treat it more as like, okay, it has to be good. It's good to finish, it's good to move forward, but like, like we were talking about earlier, like there's a headspace you have to be in. Whereas querying, no matter what mood you're in, like get your 5 queries out. Doesn't matter. You'll feel great
Absolutely.
afterward, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see that.
It's a job.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not lying. There's definitely some
Yeah.
legwork that you have to do in order to keep it going. Um,
Yeah.
when you finally got to the point that you're at, like not now, but to where it was actually on the shelf, what did that journey feel like?
When it was actually on the shelf,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really something. I mean, the process is filled with a lot of really wonderful moments, from getting your cover to meeting your editor, to when your editor delivers the final manuscript, to getting your author copies, to seeing arcs. I mean, my book came out in August. Yeah. But I did a book signing with they did advanced readers copies, a book signing at this conference. And I mean, like I ran out of books, I was signing for teachers and librarians and all this stuff. And there's all these really nice moments. I was at a bookstore. I actually went to a bookstore to sign some copies, but I started looking around the bookstore. I was just browsing, and I totally forgot why I was there. And I saw the spine of my book. I was like, that spine looks so familiar. Like, what is it? And it just like, it took me like 10 seconds to realize like, it's your book, but also, yeah, like you actually came here to sign some stock too. So it's surreal. It's really wonderful. I hope if people are out there writing or querying right now, that you get to experience it. Like whatever your book becomes in the end, a lot of it's out of your hands, but like there's a lot of really wonderful moments along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great. As we close this down, is there any last minute advice that you'd like to give the Wattpadders out there?
Honestly, like, query as much as you can. When you're finally ready to get it out there, like treat it like you would writing, even if it's less fun. And really, like, don't worry about the rejection. It's a numbers game. I was rejected 120 something times, finally got an offer. It happens. People sell books every day. So, you can do it too. But really, like, it is worthwhile, even though at times you're like, why am I doing this? This is insane. So stick with it. And, like, you have to be your own advocate before a publisher or an agent advocates for you and your work. So, like just go at it really with a lot of effort and like don't worry about the end result so much. Just put in the work.
Love it, love it. All right, well, I'd like
Yeah.
to thank Rob Shapiro for being here today, and we hope that you continue to write the good fight. And we will see you next week, same time, same great channel. Bye bye.
Thanks.